Okay, so Compliance Scorecard, you're fairly recently announced you're now partnering with the Pax8 marketplace, and I guess the obvious first thing to understand is how the collaboration came about.
Yeah, we've been chatting with Pax8 for quite a while. They have a process in place to kind of get through the vendor hoops and whatnot along the way. So, yeah, we've been working with them, probably better part of a year, getting our, line in the queue and waiting our turn appropriately. And, that finally came about. And, as a former MSP, I have been using Pax8 for years. I mean, years and years and years. And now over on the vendor side, realizing, the value that the marketplace can bring and, being able to have now our compliance scorecard as part of their offering.
Okay, and in terms of the objective, MSPs are going to be able to do things like streamline policy management, keep up to date with regulations, which there always seems to be something new on the horizon, shall we say, and also sort of reduce compliance risk more generally, I suppose. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about the opportunity there to help MSPs.
Yeah, so MSPs that are familiar with the Pax8 marketplace, it obviously gives them an opportunity to, add that to their existing stack, have that centralized billing that the marketplace, Pax8 marketplace can bring. But as a compliance tool, Compliance Scorecard is way more than just policies and procedures. We have full-blown assessment modules, risk register, asset governance, and we've just recently launched a full program around security awareness training. It's going to be a huge announcement coming out in the next week or two about what that actually means for MSPs and their customers. I'll give you a little taste. So a lot of the compliance components, you might have a tool, you might have a policy, you might have a thing, but there isn't a central location that brings this all together, right? So part of what we've built and what we continue to iterate and grow is proving ongoing continuous compliance. You have a policy that defines the why, you have a procedure that defines the how, and now with Compliance Scorecard, you have KPIs and metrics that you can actually monitor with tools that MSPs are used to using, pulling this all together into compliance monitoring, or ConMon, or continuous monitoring, what they talk about a lot in the industry. So, we like to think it's the first of its kind, GRC engineering, where we actually take the tools, tie them to frameworks and controls, allow the MSP and their customer to set their metrics, set their KPIs. In the case of security awareness training, we want 80% of our staff to complete their training on time, or whatever those, we have a slew of KPIs that we can pick from, but actually being able to use what's now being coined as GRC engineering, or governance, risk, and compliance engineering, and actually taking that full life cycle of not just the tool, but tying it to a framework, backing it up with policy, procedures, and key performance indicators or metrics to prove it. Nobody's doing that, and we're pretty excited to launch this new component and launch it with our partners at Pax8.
Okay, that's fantastic, because that's answered my last question, but I'll still ask it later on anyway, because there'll be other things you maybe tell me, but I was going to ask what's on the horizon. But in terms of the benefits that you're already providing, and clearly with what you've just given us a hint of there, continue to do, you're talking around sort of enhancing risk management, defensibility, and customer engagement, to your point there. And I guess overall, you're just helping companies embed compliance into their MSP organization, which I guess would be interesting from your point of view. Is that, one would assume that was pretty much what people wanted to do, but some of them either not as committed as they should be, or they're finding it difficult to find the tools such as you offer, to get the whole thing up and running?
Traditionally, MSPs, at least in my opinion, own all the risk. And what I mean by that is they tend to not um, involve their customer in making risk-based decisions. So, for example, whether it's compliance specific, SOC 2, ISO, CMMC, whether it is a specific regulation or compliance, being able to conduct an assessment, identify those gaps, put those gaps on a risk register, and then allowing the customer to make those risk-based decisions like, hey, we noticed you don't have backups. You should probably have backups. Do you want to deploy backups? On that risk register, the customer can then make those decisions on mitigate, accept, transfer, avoid, defer, being able to track what the customer said. Of course, we want backups. Great, go build out a project plan of action milestones, and go do the work. Or, no, we don't want them, and here's the reason why. With the risk register function, that allows MSPs and their customers to build defensibility. Like you said earlier, being able to invite that customer into the conversation, giving them the options to be able to understand their risk posture, and then make risk-based decisions off of the information that the MSPs are facilitating.
Okay, in terms of the actual compliance scorecard sort of components, if you like, you've referred to the risk register there, and I know that's one of the key features, but you've also got asset management, I think, compliance control assessment, CCA reports, and then policy management and workflow automation, or what I think you call 4A framework. So please, just talk to some or all of those in terms of what it, is you're actually delivering to folks.
Yeah, so compliance scorecard is way more, as I said earlier, than just policies, right? Policies set the foundation to be able to build out a risk management program, right? Beyond that, conducting assessments, either specific on a framework like CIS or HIPAA or NIST or CMMC, conducting an assessment, and then being able to provide evidence and tying that into control statements, doing an assessment, identify the gaps, getting those gaps on a risk register, and working through a plan of action and milestones. We have a full-blown project center where you can build out projects, you can assign tasks and to-dos to individuals or groups of individuals, setting timelines and milestones, even cost-related factors like, hey, to implement backup, it's going to cost you a nickel. But if you don't, it's going to cost you $1 billion. I'm using round numbers facetiously, but bringing full-blown compliance governance to the process. In addition, asset governance. Like, not a lot of people are, and a lot of MSPs are actually looking at the assets on a regular basis and then allowing the customer to say, yeah, those are our humans. Yes, those are our laptops and our servers and our SaaS. That whole govern function, that whole ability to show to your customer, hey, these are the things we know about. Is it right? And allow the customer to be like, oh, yes, it is, or not, right? Being able to fully govern assets, as you mentioned, our 4A process. When we talk about governing, people go, I don't know what that means. In simplest terms, it means to steer or to guide. I'm going to, as an MSP, govern or steer my customer away from risks and allow them to make decisions using Compliance Scorecard's 4-part process: alignment, authorization, adoption, and assessment. And I can get into each one of those components, but breaking that down into a repeatable process can help MSPs do that work at scale.
Okay, and I'm also wondering, in terms of the shared responsibility, in your experience, are are both parties, MSPs and their customers, fully, shall we say, aware of what it is they're responsible for or not responsible for? Or do the customer tend to think, oh, the MSP is doing it all for me, therefore, if someone comes knocking on the door, I'll just point them in the direction of the MSP? And does the MSP conversely think, well, it doesn't actually matter to me because I'm not the customer, so if someone knocks on the door, I'm sort of one removed from it. Just your thoughts, I suppose, as to that responsibility.
Shared responsibility is a big component because end customers just assume, oh, the IT guy takes care of that. And the IT guy, or the MSP, is like, no, we don't do that. But by building out a shared responsibility matrix, you can really start to define who's responsible, who's accountable, who's informed. We take it even a step further to build out what's called RACI, RACI. It's a matrix to be able to say who's responsible, who should be informed, who's accountable. Another layer deep around shared responsibility matrix. End customers assume MSPs just do it because we pay them to do it. And MSPs are like, no, we only do this. By building out an SRM, a shared responsibility matrix, and a RACI matrix, it really can start to delineate who is actually responsible. Is it the customer? Is it the MSP? Is it a tool? Or is it a combination of those things? In Compliance Scorecard, you can manage all of that. Shared responsibility matrix, a RACI matrix, all tying it back to who's responsible. Is it me? Or is it the customer? Or is it a tool? Or is it some flavor of the middle?
And I'm guessing as and when something there is an incident, or just let's say somebody from a regulatory body sort of makes some inquiries, having that clear plan and lines of reporting are quite important, because I mean, if something goes wrong, dare I say, but there's a very clear structure and framework to show how things are addressed, and therefore if something went wrong, it's despite some good housekeeping, people are much more likely to be dealt with, whether leniently or at least in a reasonable fashion, as opposed to if the person knocks on the door, whatever, and says, well, this is just one big mess because you're all pointing at each other, therefore I'm going to come down on you like the proverbial ton of bricks. Is that fair to sort of characterize the different reactions depending on how you look after yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, as you start to, start at the very beginning with your managed service agreement and then a service catalog and kind of working your way through, like building out your IT service or your MSP, having clear lines in the sand of who's responsible, if and when, well, more when an incident happens, being able to not just finger point, but to be able to trace back to we were or we were not protecting that thing, defending that thing, securing that thing, because our shared responsibility matrix said, nope, we're only doing this, or we're doing all of this, right? And so it not only does it set customer expectations on both sides, right? Us as the MSP, we expect XYZ, and the customer expects ABC. But during the event of an incident, now insurance and all the other law enforcement and things that happen during an incident, now they know who they should go to for whatever information might be needed during that incident.
Okay, and in terms of what's going on at the company as well, I know you've given us a taster of what's to come, but I think you've already or fairly recently launched 2 new programs. One, I think, is Kickstart, and the other was professional services. So please tell us a little bit more about each of those.
Yeah, so we acquired Privacy MSP back in December and got that rolling. Brian Blakely has pretty lengthy experience in building out professional services organizations. What we've noticed over the last year or two here building out Compliance Scorecard is MSPs fall into a couple of different buckets. Hey, we know what the hell we're doing. Just give me a tool to do it faster and better. Great, the platform can help you. Or we kind of know, but we really want some help. Can you partner with us? Great. We'll white label our professional services division on the side. We'll come in next to you or alongside you and kind of help you through the process. You end up working with yourself or your end customer to become compliant, basically audit readiness. And then third is, yeah, I don't want to do any of this, but I have a customer that has a specific need. Can you just do it for me? So if we think of the I do, you do, we do kind of model, professional services falls right into that category, working side by side with their MSP and one of their customers. Kickstart, on the other hand, what we noticed is that a lot of MSPs are highly technical and they kind of lack a little in the administrative component. What the Kickstart 12-week program can do is get them from zero to hero, walk them through a step-by-step process, sitting with one of our GRC professional services expert week after week after week, and coaching them and guiding them and walking them through this 12-week process so that at the end, not only do they have their own house in order, right, their own baseline, now they'll have a go-to-market strategy. They'll have some campaigns in a box. They'll be able to actually sell compliance as a service because they just did it for themselves in this 12-week, rapid boot camp, getting their stuff together, working with the platform and our pro services team to get them from zero to hero.
Okay, and then so you gave us the preview at the fairly near the start of the interview. Any other sort of things on the roadmap that you can share?
Yeah.
I guess also it could be good to understand how you see. I mean, with Pax8, is it very much you're now on their marketplace, sort of that's it, or do you other ways you continue to work with them to develop? Do they come to you, say, what about this, or do you come to just how that relationship evolves, if at all, over time?
Yeah, so a couple of different things. The relationship with Pax8 has been, I've known the team over there. They've known me for 4 or 5 years. We've worked together on a bunch of different things. They have started to put together a CIS, the Center for Internet Security, framework mapping for vendors to be able to prove that they meet a control. Working as part of that work group over there, well before we were even in the catalog, trying to be able to build out a roadmap of, I am a vendor, I meet these controls, here's how I prove it by walking through this framework mapping that can actually build out, quote, quote, scientific methods of being able to say, I meet that control. Not just because marketing says I meet that control, but because there's a process, there's a method, and there's components behind it that say, no, they do actually or don't meet those controls. So that's one way I'm personally involved with Pax8, is working through the framework mappings and having actual vendors being able to prove what controls their tool can actually meet. That's a separate project outside of what I'm doing with Compliance Scorecard, but obviously being able to bring that level of knowledge with them. As far as new features within Compliance Scorecard, we have just started to build some AI components. I'll just use the word AI generically, right? Machine learning, agnostic, MCP, all the different buzzwords that people are hearing or learning about in this artificial intelligence world. So we are starting to bake some of those things out. I have always been a big proponent of, let's do what's right, not what's popular. However, the popularity of large language, AI, generative, all the things is really starting to become a key driver, especially, as I mentioned before, GRC engineering. So we've got some big plans to actually prove ongoing continuous compliance with a little bit of AI baked in to help them streamline that effectively and appropriately, rather than it just being a popular thing to do.
Okay, I mean, that's been a great update as to what's going on at Compliance Scorecard. Obviously, the initial thing being the the launching of yourselves with the PAX 8 marketplace, but you shared some great insights into what's going on at the company and your thoughts as to the GRC area more. So, Tim, really appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Philip, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to continuing having more in-depth conversations with you and the team there, and being able to really just help MSPs build out a good program going forward.
Well, that sounds good.